The merciless sun beat down on Clara Mitchell's porcelain skin as she wiped sweat from her brow, watching in dismay as the wagon wheel twisted and splintered beneath the weight of her life's possessions. The year was 1876, and the unforgiving Nevada territory showed no mercy to a woman traveling alone across its vast expanse. "No, no, no," Clara muttered, kicking the dust with her worn boot. The heat was suffocating, rising in visible waves from the parched earth surrounding the trail that led to Awahi. Her journey from Boston had been long and grueling, but this final stretch through the desert threatened to be her undoing. She had left everything behind: her comfortable life, her disapproving family, her jilted fiancé, all to claim the teaching position that awaited her in Awahi. Now, miles from civilization with a broken wagon and dwindling water supply, Clara wondered if her impulsive decision would be her last. The distant sound of hoofbeats stirred her from her despair. Shielding her eyes from the glare, Clara spotted a lone rider approaching, his silhouette wavering in the heat. As he drew closer, she tensed. Out here, a stranger could mean salvation or danger. The rider slowed his chestnut stallion to a stop beside her wagon. Dust swirled around them as he dismounted in one fluid motion. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin that spoke of years under the western sky. His dark hair curled beneath a well-worn hat, and his blue eyes assessed her predicament with a practiced gaze. "Seems like you've got yourself in a bit of trouble, madam," he said, his voice carrying a slight drawl. Clara straightened her spine, determined not to appear as desperate as she felt. The wheel gave out. I believe the heat caused the wood to warp and splinter. The stranger knelt to examine the damage, removing his hat to reveal more of that dark hair. "Name's Adam Sullivan," he offered without looking up. "I was heading to Awahi when I spotted your wagon." "Clara Mitchell," she replied, grateful but cautious. "I'm the new schoolteacher for Awahi." Adam glanced up, surprise evident in his expression. "We've been waiting on you, Miss Mitchell. Town's been without a proper teacher for nearly a year." He stood and dusted off his hands on his denim pants. "This wheel's beyond repair, but I think we can jury-rig something to get you to town." His eyes met hers, steady and reassuring. "We'll fix it together, hand in hand if you're willing." Clara hesitated only briefly before nodding. What choice did she have? "I appreciate the help, Mr. Sullivan." "Adam," he corrected, already moving to unload his saddlebags. "We've got a few hours of daylight left. If we work quickly, we might make it to Awahi before nightfall." As he organized tools and materials from his pack, Clara studied him covertly. There was a quiet confidence in his movements, a capability that both intimidated and impressed her. In Boston, men like her former fiancé, Harold Whitmore, were soft-handed and formal. Adam Sullivan was clearly cut from different cloth, rougher, more authentic somehow. "You're a long way from home," Adam observed as he began removing what remained of the broken wheel. "Boston, if I'm guessing right from your accent," Clara smiled despite herself. "Is it that obvious to these ears?" "Yes, madam," he said with a hint of a smile. "Mind holding this in place while I work the axle free?" Clara moved to assist, her gloved hands gripping the wooden spoke he indicated. Their fingers brushed momentarily, and she felt a strange flutter in her chest that she quickly attributed to exhaustion and heat. "What brings a Boston lady all the way to Awahi?" Adam asked as they worked together. "It's not exactly what you'd call civilized out here." Clara considered her answer carefully. "I suppose I wanted something different, something real." Adam's hands stilled for a moment as he looked at her with new interest. "Most folks come west for gold or land. Something real is a new one. Is it so strange to want purpose?" Clara challenged, surprising herself with her candor. In Boston, my life was predetermined. Here I can be useful, I can build something. Adam nodded slowly. I reckon I understand that better than most. He returned to his work, fashioning a temporary repair using parts from his own supplies and materials salvaged from Clara's wagon. As they worked side by side under the relentless sun, Clara found herself sharing more about her life in Boston, her stifling upbringing, her passion for education, and her desire to make her own way in the world. In turn, Adam revealed pieces of his own story. Born in Missouri, raised by a widowed father who taught him ranching, and eventually making his own way west after the war. "You fought in the war?" Clara asked, passing him a canteen of water. Adam took a drink before answering, his expression somber. "Yes, madam, Confederate side, though not by choice. Missouri was complicated." He handed back the canteen, his fingers lingering near hers. "Not something I'm proud of, but it's part of who I am." Clara appreciated his honesty. In Boston, the Civil War was discussed in terms of politics and principles. Here was a man who had lived through it, carried its weight, and continued forward. Hours passed as they worked together to repair the wagon. The temporary wheel Adam crafted wasn't perfect, but it would hold until they reached town. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, painting the desert in hues of gold and crimson, they loaded the last of Clara's possessions back onto the wagon. "There," Adam said, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's not pretty, but it'll get you to Awahi." Clara looked at their handiwork with genuine admiration. "I couldn't have done this without you, Mr. Sullivan." "Adam," she corrected herself, offering a sincere smile. "I'm in your debt." "No debt necessary," he replied, securing the last rope. "I'll ride alongside you to town. Make sure you arrive safely." The journey to Awahi took longer than expected, the makeshift wheel forcing them to travel at a cautious pace. As they rode, the setting sun cast long shadows across the desert landscape. Clara found herself stealing glances at Adam's profile, admiring the strength in his jawline and the quiet determination in his eyes. "Tell me about Awahi," she requested, as their path wound through a narrow valley. "What should I expect?" Adam considered the question. "It's a mining town, primarily silver and copper, rough around the edges but decent at its heart, about 400 souls including the outlying ranches and farms." He glanced her way. "The children need someone like you." "Many haven't had proper schooling." Clara felt both excitement and trepidation at the challenge ahead. "And the accommodations. I was told there would be lodging arranged. Mrs. Winters runs a boarding house for respectable women." "You'll have a room there until more permanent arrangements can be made." Adam adjusted his hat. "The schoolhouse itself is modest but sound. I helped rebuild it last spring after a fire." "You seem to know a great deal about town affairs," Clara observed. Adam's lips quirked in a half-smile. "I serve as deputy to Sheriff Donnelly when I'm not working my ranch. In a place like Awahi, most folks wear multiple hats." The information surprised Clara. This cowboy who had appeared out of nowhere to rescue her was also a lawman and a rancher. The men she knew in Boston defined themselves by a single profession: banker, lawyer, doctor. The West, it seemed, required versatility. As twilight deepened into dusk, the first lights of Awahi appeared in the distance. Clara felt a surge of relief mingled with anticipation. This dusty frontier town would be her home now, these people her community. "Almost there," Adam said, guiding his horse closer to her wagon. "How are you holding up?" Clara realized she was exhausted, her muscles aching from the physical labor of the day, but she felt a deep satisfaction as well. "I'm fine," she assured him. Better than fine, actually. Today was illuminating. Adam's expression softened in the fading light. "You're stronger than you look, Boston. I think you might just belong out here after all." His words warmed something inside her, a spark of belonging she hadn't expected to find so quickly in this alien landscape. As they approached the town's main street, Clara straightened her posture and adjusted her bonnet, determined to make a good first impression despite her disheveled state. Awahi was smaller than she had imagined, a collection of wooden buildings lining a wide dirt street. Lanterns glowed in windows, and the sounds of a piano drifted from what appeared to be a saloon. Several townspeople paused their evening activities to watch as Adam led her wagon down the center of town. Deputy Sullivan, a gray-haired man, called out, approaching them with a curious expression. "We weren't expecting you back until tomorrow." "Change of plans, Sheriff," Adam replied, dismounting to shake the man's hand. "Found our new schoolteacher stranded about 10 miles out. Broken wheel." The sheriff turned kind eyes to Clara. "Miss Mitchell, I presume. I'm Sheriff Thomas Donnelly. Welcome to Awahi, Nevada Territory." Clara managed a tired smile. "Thank you, Sheriff. I apologize for my appearance. It's been quite a journey." "No apologies needed," the sheriff assured her. "We're just glad you've arrived safely." He glanced at the wagon's makeshift wheel. "Sullivan's handiwork, I see." Adam nodded. "It'll need proper repairs before she can use it again." "I'll have Peterson look at it first thing tomorrow," the sheriff promised, then gestured down the street. "For now, let's get Miss Mitchell settled at Mrs. Winter's boarding house. She's been preparing for your arrival all week." Clara felt overwhelmed by their kindness but was too exhausted to properly express her gratitude. As if sensing her fatigue, Adam stepped in. "I'll see to Miss Mitchell's trunk and belongings," he offered. "Perhaps you could escort her to Mrs. Winter's." The sheriff agreed, and within moments, Clara found herself being led down the boardwalk toward a 2-story clapboard house set slightly apart from the businesses. Before she followed, she turned back to Adam. "Mr. Sullivan, Adam, thank you again. For everything." His blue eyes held hers for a long moment. "Welcome to Awahi, Miss Mitchell. I have a feeling you're going to change things around here." Clara couldn't explain why his words filled her with such anticipation. But as she followed Sheriff Donnelly toward her new lodgings, she felt a curious sense of homecoming, despite being thousands of miles from everything she had ever known. Mrs. Winters proved to be a formidable woman in her 50s with silver-streaked dark hair and keen eyes that missed nothing. She welcomed Clara efficiently, showing her to a small but clean room on the second floor that overlooked the main street. "Bathrooms at the end of the hall, Mrs. Winters explained, lighting a lamp on the bedside table. "Breakfast at 6 sharp, dinner at 6 in the evening. We keep respectable hours here." "Thank you for your hospitality," Clara said, sinking gratefully onto the edge of the bed. "I appreciate the accommodation on such short notice." Mrs. Winter's stern expression softened slightly. "Deputy Sullivan sent word ahead that you'd had trouble on the trail. A hot bath is waiting for you downstairs when you're ready." The thought of a bath nearly brought tears to Clara's eyes. "That sounds heavenly." After Mrs. Winters departed, Clara moved to the window, watching as Adam supervised the unloading of her trunk and other possessions from the wagon. Even in the dim glow of street lanterns, she could appreciate the strength in his shoulders, the careful way he handled her belongings. He paused once to glance up at her window, and Clara stepped back quickly, her cheeks warming at being caught watching him. Later, soaking in the promised bath, Clara reflected on the day's events. She had arrived in the West expecting hardship, yes, but also expecting to face those hardships alone. Instead, her first day had brought her face to face with a man who embodied everything she'd heard about the frontier spirit: resourcefulness, strength, and an unflinching willingness to help a stranger in need. Adam Sullivan, she whispered to herself, testing the name on her lips as steam rose around her. She had no business thinking of him as anything but a kind stranger who had helped her in a moment of crisis. Yet something in his blue eyes, something in the gentle way his rough hands had guided hers as they worked together, had awakened sensations Clara had never experienced in Boston's proper drawing rooms. Shaking off such inappropriate thoughts, Clara reminded herself of her purpose in coming west. She was here to teach, to build a life of meaning and independence. Romance had no place in her carefully constructed plans, especially not with a cowboy deputy, who probably saw her as nothing more than a helpless Easterner who couldn't even manage the basics of wagon repair. Still, as she drifted off to sleep that night in her narrow bed, it was Adam's voice she heard in her dreams, saying those words that had sparked something between them. "We'll fix it together, hand in hand." The morning brought a flurry of activity. As Clara was introduced to the town school board, three stern-looking men, who made no effort to hide their scrutiny of her qualifications and character. The schoolhouse, as Adam had described, was modest but sound, a single room with rows of benches, a teacher's desk, and a small blackboard. "Term starts Monday next," explained Mr. Hargrove, the board's chairman and owner of the town's general store. "You'll have about 20 children, ages 5 to 15. Some only come when they can be spared from ranch work or mining duties." Clara nodded, already making mental notes about how to organize lessons for such a varied group. "I'll prepare a flexible curriculum. What textbooks are available?" The three men exchanged glances. "We've got a dozen McGuffey readers, some arithmetic primers, and a few Bibles," Mr. Peterson, the town's blacksmith, informed her. Previous teacher left some maps and slates. It was less than she'd hoped for, but more than she'd feared. "That will do to start," Clara said confidently. "I brought some additional materials with me." As the men continued their tour of the schoolhouse, Clara noticed Adam leaning against the doorframe, watching the proceedings with an amused expression. When their eyes met, he tipped his hat slightly in greeting. "Sullivan," Mr. Hargrove acknowledged, noticing the deputy's presence. "Don't you have sheriff duties to attend to?" "Just checking to make sure Miss Mitchell is settling in properly," Adam replied easily. "Sheriff's orders." Clara suppressed a smile at the obvious fiction. Sheriff Donnelly had already checked on her at breakfast, expressing the town's gratitude that she had made the journey safely. After the board members departed, Adam remained, moving into the schoolhouse to examine the repair he'd made to her trunk's lock, which had been damaged during the unloading. "They're good men," he said, referring to the board. "Just set in their ways." "As are most men," Clara replied, sorting through the meager collection of textbooks. Adam chuckled. "Present company included." Clara glanced up, studying him. Today he wore his deputy's badge pinned to his vest, and a gun belt rested on his hips. Despite these symbols of authority, there was nothing imposing about his demeanor. "I haven't decided about you yet, Deputy Sullivan," she said honestly. "Fair enough." He moved toward the door, then paused. "I'm riding out to my ranch this afternoon, but I'll be back in town by Sunday. Perhaps I could show you around Awahi properly then. There's more to this place than first meets the eye." Clara should have declined. Propriety demanded it, but something about Adam Sullivan made her want to set aside the rules she'd lived by in Boston. "I'd like that," she said, surprising herself with her boldness. Adam's smile transformed his face, softening the weathered lines around his eyes. "Sunday after church, then. Good day, Miss Mitchell." After he left, Clara found herself staring at the empty doorway, a strange lightness in her chest. This was not why she had come to Nevada territory, not to become distracted by a handsome deputy with kind eyes. Yet she couldn't deny the anticipation she felt at the prospect of spending more time with him. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Clara organized the schoolhouse, created lesson plans, and began meeting the families whose children would soon be in her care. Everywhere she went, the people of Awahi welcomed her with a warmth that gradually eased her initial nervousness. By Sunday morning, as Clara sat in the town's small church listening to the preacher's sermon, she realized she was genuinely looking forward to Adam's promised tour. She spotted him across the aisle, sitting with Sheriff Donnelly and his wife. Unlike many of the other men who looked uncomfortable in their Sunday best, Adam appeared at ease in his clean shirt and polished boots. After the service, as the congregation filtered out into the bright sunlight, Adam made his way to her side. "Good morning, Miss Mitchell," he greeted her, that same gentle smile warming his features. "Still up for seeing the sights of Awahi?" Clara nodded, aware of the curious glances from townspeople. "I am, though I'm not sure how many sights there are to see in such a small town." "You'd be surprised," Adam assured her, offering his arm. "Shall we?" The touch of his arm beneath her gloved hand sent a thrill through Clara that she struggled to contain. As they strolled down the main street, Adam pointed out buildings and shared stories about the town's history, how it had sprung up almost overnight when silver was discovered in the nearby mountains, how it had survived fires and flash floods, and even a smallpox outbreak. "And this," he said, leading her to a small creek that ran behind the town, "is Awahi's lifeblood." The creek wasn't impressive by Eastern standards, but in this desert landscape, the flowing water and the green willows that lined its banks created an oasis of beauty. Adam helped Clara down the sloping bank to a flat rock beside the water. "During the summer, this is where folks come to cool off," he explained. "Children learn to swim here. Ladies do their washing upstream." Clara removed her bonnet, enjoying the play of sunlight through the willow branches. "It's lovely," she admitted. "I wouldn't have expected such a peaceful spot." Adam settled beside her on the rock, maintaining a respectful distance. "That's the thing about the West, Miss Mitchell. Beauty shows up in unexpected places." Something in his tone made Clara glance his way, only to find him watching her with an intensity that quickened her pulse. She looked away quickly, focusing on the rippling water. "May I ask you something personal?" Adam ventured after a comfortable silence. Clara hesitated, then nodded. "You may ask. I reserve the right not to answer." He smiled at her caution. "Fair enough. I was wondering what really brought you out here. Teaching positions exist in the East. Why travel so far from everything familiar?" The question wasn't unexpected, but Clara still found herself searching for the right words. "I told you before I wanted something real." "There's more to it than that," Adam said gently. "I can see it in your eyes sometimes. You're running from something as much as you're running toward something else." Clara stiffened, surprised by his perception. "That's rather presumptuous, Deputy Sullivan." "Just Adam," he corrected. "And maybe it is presumptuous, but out here people learn to read others quickly. It's often a matter of survival." The water gurgled over stones, filling the silence between them. Clara considered deflecting further, but something about Adam's straightforward manner invited honesty. "I was engaged," she admitted finally. "To a man my parents considered suitable. Harold was. Comfortable, safe, the kind of man who would provide a predictable life." Adam waited for her to continue, his expression neutral. "2 weeks before the wedding, I found him with another woman, my cousin, actually." Clara's voice remained steady, the pain of the betrayal dulled by time and distance. "The scandal was contained. No one outside the families knew. Harold was apologetic, assured me it was a momentary lapse in judgment." "But you couldn't forgive him," Adam guessed. Clara laughed without humor. That's the thing I could have forgiven him. What terrified me was the realization that I wasn't even angry enough. I didn't love him enough to feel properly betrayed. She twisted the fabric of her skirt between her fingers. I realized I was about to marry a man I didn't love, to live a life I didn't want, simply because it was expected. Adam nodded slowly. So you ran. I prefer to think of it as choosing a different path, Clara corrected. When I saw the advertisement for a teacher in Nevada territory, it felt like providence. Brave decision, Adam said, respect evident in his voice. Most women would have gone through with the marriage anyway. I'm not most women, Clara replied, meeting his gaze directly. Something flickered in Adam's blue eyes, admiration perhaps, or understanding. No, he agreed quietly. You certainly are not Clara Mitchell. The use of her first name sent a pleasant shiver down her spine. No one in Awahi called her Clara, yet she was Miss Mitchell to everyone, the proper Eastern schoolteacher. Now it's my turn to ask a personal question, she said, seizing her courage. Adam spread his hands. Ask away. Why are you being so kind to me? Rescuing me on the trail, helping me settle in, showing me around town. It seems above and beyond the call of duty, even for a deputy. The question appeared to catch him off guard. He looked away, watching an eagle circle overhead before answering. When I first came to Awahi 5 years ago, I was broken in ways that didn't show on the outside, he said slowly. The war, losing my father, some bad decisions afterward. I was drifting, angry at the world. He picked up a small stone, turning it over in his palm. Sheriff Donnelly took a chance on me, gave me purpose, helped me build something here. Adam tossed the stone into the creek, creating ripples that expanded outward. I guess I believe in passing that kindness forward. It was a good answer, a noble one even, but Clara sensed there was more he wasn't saying. Before she could press further, the church bell rang in the distance, signaling noon. We should head back, Adam said, rising and offering his hand to help her up. Mrs. Winters is strict about Sunday dinner being served on time. Clara placed her hand in his, allowing him to pull her to her feet. They stood close, too close for a moment, their hands still joined. Clara could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes, the way the sun brought out auburn highlights in his dark hair. Thank you for showing me the creek, she said, her voice softer than she intended. Adam held her gaze, something unspoken passing between them. There's more I want to show you, he replied, if you're willing. Clara knew he wasn't just talking about places in Awahi. This man was offering to show her a different way of life, a different way of seeing the world. It both thrilled and terrified her. I believe I am, she whispered. The moment stretched between them, taut with possibility, until the church bell rang again. Adam released her hand reluctantly, and they made their way back to town in a silence that hummed with unspoken thoughts. The following week brought the start of the school term. Clara threw herself into teaching with all the passion and dedication she had brought west with her. The children of Awahi were a diverse group, the sons and daughters of miners, ranchers, shopkeepers, and even the local brothel owner's child, though no one acknowledged this openly. Many had received only sporadic education before, but all were eager to learn. Clara found herself adapting her Eastern methods to these Western children, incorporating practical lessons about local plants, mining operations, and ranching alongside traditional subjects. She saw Adam occasionally in town, their interactions brief, but charged with an awareness that had been born by the creek. He would tip his hat as they passed on the boardwalk, or stop by the schoolhouse after hours with some small gift, a wildflower bouquet, a book of Western poetry, once even a jackrabbit he had shot, dressed, and ready for Mrs. Winters' stew pot. 3 weeks into the term, as Clara was dismissing her students for the day, Adam appeared at the schoolhouse door. "Miss Mitchell," he greeted her formally, mindful of the lingering children. "I was wondering if you might accompany me on a short ride this Saturday. There's a place about an hour from town I think you'd appreciate." Clara felt the curious stares of her older female students who giggled behind their hands. "That sounds lovely, Deputy Sullivan," she replied with equal formality. "What time should I be ready?" "I'll fetch you at 9 if that suits." His eyes conveyed more than his polite words. Clara nodded, ignoring the knowing looks from 12-year-old Betsy Hargrove and her friends. 9 it is. After the last student departed, Adam remained, leaning against the doorframe in what Clara had come to recognize as his characteristic pose. "You've done wonders with this place," he observed, looking around the schoolroom where Clara had hung maps, student artwork, and educational charts. "The children are wonderful," Clara said, gathering papers from her desk. "Eager to learn, respectful for the most part," she smiled. "Even the Harper twins, though they test my patience daily." Adam laughed. "Those two would test the patience of a saint. Their father says the same." Clara finished organizing her materials, aware of Adam watching her. "Was there something else, Deputy?" "Just wondering if you're happy here," he said, his tone casual but his eyes serious. "If Awahi is becoming home for you." The question touched Clara. No one else had thought to ask how she was truly adjusting to life in the West. "I am," she answered honestly. "More than I expected to be." Adam nodded, satisfaction in his expression. "Good. That's good." On Saturday morning, Clara rose early, taking extra care with her appearance. She chose a riding outfit of dark blue that Mrs. Winters had helped her alter from her Boston clothes, less formal, more practical for Western life, but still flattering to her figure and coloring. Adam arrived promptly at 9, leading 2 horses, his chestnut stallion and a gentle-looking mare. "Good morning," he greeted her, his appreciation for her appearance evident in his gaze. "I borrowed Molly here from the livery. She's even tempered, good for a lady rider." Clara approached the mare, stroking her velvety nose. "She's beautiful." In Boston, Clara had ridden occasionally in the park, but always side saddle, always on groomed paths. This would be different. Adam helped her mount, his hands strong and steady at her waist. The brief contact sent warmth spreading through Clara's body despite the morning chill. Once she was settled in the saddle, Adam mounted his own horse with the easy grace of a man who had spent most of his life on horseback. They rode out of town, following a trail that wound through sagebrush and across rocky terrain. Adam pointed out landmarks and shared stories about the land where the best hunting was found, which plants were medicinal, how to read the weather from cloud formations. Clara listened, absorbing everything, asking questions that made him smile with approval. After about an hour, they crested a rise and the landscape opened before them. A hidden valley spread below, greener than the surrounding desert, with a small lake at its center that glittered like a sapphire in the sunlight. "Oh," Clara breathed, reining in her mare to take in the view. "It's magnificent." Adam watched her reaction with pleasure. "The local Paiute consider it a sacred place. They call it the eye of the sky. Most white folks don't know it exists." "How did you discover it?" Clara asked as they rode down into the valley. "I was tracking a mountain lion that had been taking calves from my herd," Adam explained. "Led me here, then disappeared. Never did find that cat, but I found this instead." He gestured around them. "I come here when I need to think, to remind myself why I stayed out west." They dismounted near the lake, and Adam spread a blanket he had brought in his saddlebags. From another bag, he produced bread, cheese, dried fruit, and a bottle of wine. "A picnic," Clara said, delighted by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. Adam arranged the food between them. Mrs. Winters helped with the provisions. She approves, by the way. Clara raised an eyebrow as she settled on the blanket, arranging her skirts modestly. Approves of what, exactly? Of me showing you special attention, Adam replied frankly. She said you need someone to help you get the starch out of your Eastern ways. Clara laughed, both embarrassed and amused. And you've appointed yourself to that task, have you? Adam's eyes held hers as he poured wine into 2 tin cups. If you'll allow it. The directness of his gaze made Clara's cheeks warm. In Boston, courtship was a formal dance of subtle signals and careful restraint. Here, with this man in this wild and beautiful place, those rules seemed artificial and constraining. I might, she admitted, accepting the cup he offered. Their fingers brushed and neither pulled away immediately. Though I warn you, I'm rather attached to some of my Eastern ways. Only some. Adam's smile was teasing now. Already making progress then. They ate and talked as the sun climbed higher in the sky. Adam spoke of his ranch, modest by some standards, but growing steadily, and his hopes to expand his herd next spring. Clara shared stories of her teaching experiences, her observations about the town and its people, her gradual adaptation to Western life. As their conversation flowed, Clara realized how comfortable she felt with Adam more herself than she had ever been with Harold or any of her Boston suitors. There was no pretense between them, no social games to navigate. When Adam looked at her, she felt truly seen, not merely observed. After they had eaten, Adam suggested a walk around the lake. They strolled side by side, close enough that their arms occasionally brushed, sending pleasant shivers through Clara each time. May I ask you something personal now? Clara ventured as they paused to watch a heron stalking fish in the shallows. Seems only fair, Adam replied. What would you like to know? Clara hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind. Have you ever been married? Adam's expression grew distant, though not closed. No, he answered simply. Then, after a pause, there was someone once before the war, Mary Beth Calloway. He picked up a flat stone and skipped it across the water's surface. We were going to marry when I returned. She didn't wait. I'm sorry, Clara said softly. Adam shrugged, but Clara could see the old hurt beneath his casual demeanor. She married a man who stayed behind, had 3 children before I even made it back to Missouri. Can't blame her, really. War changes a man. I wasn't the same person who left. How were you different? Clara asked. Adam was quiet for so long that Clara thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. I was angrier, harder, saw too much death to believe in the same things. He looked out across the lake. Took me years to find peace again. Some days I'm still looking. Clara felt an overwhelming urge to comfort him, to somehow ease the shadows that crossed his face. Without thinking, she reached for his hand, entwining her fingers with his. Adam looked down at their joined hands, then back to her face, surprise and something deeper in his expression. Clara, he said softly, just her name, but it held a world of meaning. She didn't pull away. I'm glad you found your way to Awahi, she told him. Glad our paths crossed. Adam's free hand came up to touch her cheek, calloused fingers gentle against her skin. So am I, he murmured. His gaze dropped to her lips and Clara felt her breath catch, the moment suspended between them, fragile and perfect. Then, with exquisite slowness, Adam leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was tentative at first, a question. When Clara didn't pull away, it deepened, becoming an answer. His lips were warm and firm against hers, his hand cupping her face with tender reverence. Clara felt herself responding, her free hand coming to rest on his chest, feeling his heart pounding beneath her palm. When they finally broke apart, Clara was breathless, her mind spinning with the newness of the sensations coursing through her body. In Boston, she had been kissed before chased, proper kisses from Harold and one other suitor, but nothing like this. Nothing that made her feel as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Adam rested his forehead against hers, his breathing uneven. "I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you by that broken wagon," he confessed. Clara smiled, her eyes still closed. "Even with me looking like a dust storm had swept through." "Especially then," Adam chuckled. "All fierce determination and Eastern dignity despite being stranded in the desert." Clara opened her eyes to find him watching her with such tenderness that her heart constricted. "This is happening rather fast," she whispered, not as a protest but as a recognition. Adam nodded, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. "Life moves differently out here. People recognize what matters more quickly." "And what matters to you, Adam Sullivan?" Clara asked, her voice barely audible over the gentle lapping of the lake against the shore. His blue eyes held hers, unwavering. "Right now, you do." The simple declaration touched Clara more deeply than any flowery profession of devotion ever could have. This man, she realized, would never say anything he didn't mean, would never make a promise he didn't intend to keep. They spent the rest of the afternoon by the lake, talking, occasionally exchanging kisses that grew more confident, more exploring. As the sun began its descent, Adam reluctantly suggested they should start back to town before dark. The ride back was filled with a comfortable silence, broken occasionally by observations about the landscape or memories shared. Clara felt as though something fundamental had changed within her, as if the kiss by the lake had unlocked a part of herself she hadn't known existed. As they approached Awahi, the reality of their situation began to intrude on Clara's thoughts. She was the town's schoolteacher, expected to model propriety and decorum. Adam was the deputy, respected but still carrying the reputation of a man with a mysterious past. What would the town think of their relationship? Adam seemed to sense her concerns. As they neared the edge of town, he drew his horse alongside hers. "Clara," he said quietly, "I want to court you properly if you'll allow it. No secrets, no hiding." The directness of his approach both relieved and thrilled her. "The school board may not approve," she cautioned, though her heart raced at his words. "Let me worry about Hargrove and his cronies," Adam replied with confidence. "So, will you allow me to court you, Miss Clara Mitchell of Boston?" Clara couldn't help but smile at his formal phrasing. "Yes, Mr. Adam Sullivan of Awahi, I believe I will." The weeks that followed were among the happiest of Clara's life. Adam called on her regularly at Mrs. Winter's boarding house, taking her for walks, bringing her small gifts, and escorting her to church on Sundays. They became a recognized couple in Awahi, drawing knowing smiles from some and disapproving frowns from others. Mr. Hargrove had indeed expressed concern about the town schoolteacher becoming involved with the deputy, but Sheriff Donnelly had intervened, assuring the board that both Clara and Adam were adults of sound character and judgment. One evening in late October, as autumn painted the desert in hues of gold and amber, Adam invited Clara to dinner at the small house he maintained in town, separate from his ranch. "It's perfectly respectable," he assured her when she hesitated. "Mrs. Donnelly has agreed to serve as chaperone." The evening proved delightful. Adam had gone to considerable effort to prepare a proper dinner, and Mrs. Donnelly provided both culinary assistance and appropriate supervision. After the meal, as they sat on Adam's small porch watching the sunset, Mrs. Donnelly discreetly busied herself inside with the dishes. "I have something to ask you," Adam said, taking Clara's hand in his. "Something important." Clara's heart quickened. They had been courting for nearly 2 months now, their feelings growing deeper with each passing day. Still, she hadn't dared to hope he might propose so soon. "What is it?" she asked, striving for composure. Adam drew a deep breath. "My ranch is 10 miles outside of town, too far for you to travel daily to the school." Clara nodded, unsure where this was leading. "I've been thinking about our future," he continued. "If when we marry, we'd need to make arrangements. Either I'd need to give up the ranch and become a full-time deputy, or you'd need to give up teaching." The statement wasn't what Clara had expected. "Those seem like the only options," she agreed cautiously. Adam's eyes held hers, serious but warm. "Unless we create another option, what would you think about starting a school at the ranch? For the children of the outlying homesteads who can't make it into town regularly?" Clara blinked in surprise. "A second school, more of an extension," Adam explained, growing animated. "The children who live in town would still attend the main schoolhouse. But there are at least a dozen families within riding distance of my ranch, whose children receive little or no formal education because the journey to town is too difficult, especially in winter." The idea took root in Clara's mind, expanding with possibilities. "We could arrange different days," she said thoughtfully. "Perhaps I could teach in town Monday through Wednesday and at the ranch Thursday and Friday." Adam nodded eagerly. "Exactly what I was thinking. The town board would still get their schoolteacher, and more children would receive education." Clara felt a surge of excitement at the plan, but also a flutter of uncertainty. "This is all contingent on us marrying, I assume?" Adam's expression softened. "It is. I'm not proposing right this moment, Clara. I want to do that properly when the time is right. But I wanted you to know I've been thinking about our future together, about how we can build a life that honors both your calling and mine." The thoughtfulness of his planning touched Clara deeply. Harold had never once considered her desires or ambitions in his vision of their future together. Adam, by contrast, was actively seeking ways to incorporate her passion for teaching into their shared life. "It's a wonderful idea," she said softly. "Truly wonderful." Adam smiled, relief evident in his features. "I've been worried that you might eventually grow restless here, miss the opportunities you had in the East." Clara shook her head firmly. "No, Awahi has become home to me in ways Boston never was." She squeezed his hand. "You have become home to me." The admission felt both terrifying and freeing. In that moment, Clara realized she had fallen in love with Adam Sullivan, with his strength and gentleness, his honesty and his ideals, his willingness to see her as a partner rather than a possession. Adam raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "And you to me, Clara Mitchell," he replied, his voice rough with emotion. "And you to me." As winter descended on Awahi, bringing snow to the mountains and crisp, cold days to the valley, Clara and Adam's courtship deepened. They spent Christmas together at the Donnellys, exchanging modest gifts: a hand-knitted scarf from Clara, a delicate silver brooch from Adam that must have cost him a month's deputy pay. On New Year's Day, 1877, Adam took Clara to his ranch for the first time. The property was larger than she had imagined: a sturdy main house, a barn, corral, and several outbuildings spread across a valley sheltered by low hills. A creek similar to the one behind Awahi ran through the property, providing water for the cattle that grazed on the winter-sparse grassland. "It's beautiful," Clara said sincerely as Adam showed her around. Mrs. Donnelly had again accompanied them as chaperone, but she remained on the porch with a book, giving them privacy to explore the grounds. "It needs a woman's touch," Adam admitted, leading Clara through the main house. The interior was clean but Spartan: functional furniture, few decorations, the mark of a man living alone with practicality as his primary concern. I see potential everywhere, Clara told him, already envisioning curtains at the windows, rugs on the plank floors, perhaps even a piano in the corner of the sitting room. And where would the school be? Adam led her to a building set apart from the main house, originally a storage shed, he explained, but solidly built and with good light from several windows. It would need desks, a blackboard, proper heating, Clara murmured, walking the perimeter of the space. But yes, this could work wonderfully. She turned to Adam with excitement. We could even start a small library for the ranch children. Adam watched her with a tender expression. I love seeing you like this, full of plans and purpose. Clara moved to him, placing her hands on his chest. They had grown more comfortable with physical affection over the months, though always maintaining appropriate boundaries. Thank you for thinking of this, for finding a way to make room for my dreams alongside yours. Adam covered her hands with his own. Clara, he began, then paused, seeming to gather his courage. I had planned to wait until spring to do this properly, but seeing you here in our home. He took a deep breath. I find I can't wait any longer. Clara's heart began to race as Adam stepped back slightly, then lowered himself to one knee before her. From his pocket, he withdrew a small box. Clara Mitchell, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. I have loved you since the day we fixed that wagon together, hand in hand. You have brought light and purpose and joy to my life in ways I never thought possible. He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring, a small diamond flanked by 2 sapphires that matched his eyes. Will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Tears welled in Clara's eyes as she looked down at this man who had transformed her life, who had shown her what real love could be. Yes, she whispered, then more firmly. Yes, Adam Sullivan, I will marry you. Adam's face broke into a radiant smile as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. He rose to his feet and gathered her into his arms, his kiss conveying all the love and promise of their future together. When they returned to the main house, Mrs. Donnelly took one look at Clara's glowing face and the ring on her finger and burst into happy tears, embracing them both. The whole town has been waiting for this announcement, she confessed, dabbing at her eyes. There may have been a wager or two at the saloon about when you'd propose. Adam laughed, keeping his arm around Clara's waist. And who won that wager, I wonder? Mrs. Donnelly smiled mysteriously. I believe Sheriff Donnelly will be collecting a substantial sum. He had New Year's Day in the betting pool. The news of their engagement spread quickly through Awahi. Most of the townspeople offered sincere congratulations, though Clara noticed a few disappointed looks from young women who had apparently harbored hopes for the handsome deputy themselves. The school board, after some initial resistance, agreed to Clara's proposal for splitting her teaching duties between the town school and the ranch school once she was married. Mr. Hargrove even offered to help procure additional books and supplies for the ranch schoolhouse. They set the wedding date for April 15th, when spring would have softened the landscape and travel would be easier for guests coming from outlying areas. Clara wrote to her family in Boston, not expecting them to attend but wanting to share her happiness. To her surprise, her younger sister Caroline replied that she would make the journey west for the wedding, the first sign of acceptance from her disapproving family. As the wedding day approached, Clara divided her time between teaching, preparations for the ceremony, and helping Adam ready the ranch house for her arrival. The women of Awahi embraced the upcoming wedding as a community celebration, offering help with everything from Clara's dress to the wedding feast. 2 weeks before the wedding, disaster struck. A group of cattle rustlers hit several ranches in the area, including Adam's. When word reached town, Adam and Sheriff Donnelly gathered a posse to track the thieves. Clara watched with a heavy heart as Adam checked his rifle and pistol, preparing to ride out. "I'll be back in a few days," he promised, kissing her goodbye on Mrs. Winter's porch. "Don't worry." But Clara did worry, especially when one day stretched into 3, then 5, with no word. On the 6th day, as she was dismissing her students, she heard a commotion in the street. Running outside, she saw Sheriff Donnelly's posse returning, but Adam wasn't among them. Heart pounding, Clara hurried to meet the riders. "Sheriff," she called, scanning the group desperately. "Where is Adam?" Sheriff Donnelly dismounted, his face grim. "There was a gunfight, Miss Mitchell. Adam was wounded." Clara felt the world tilt beneath her. "How badly? Where is he, doctor?" "Simmons is treating him at his office," the sheriff replied, taking her elbow to steady her. "The bullet went through his shoulder, but he lost a lot of blood on the ride back." Clara didn't wait to hear more. She gathered her skirts and ran down the street to the doctor's small office, praying with every step. Inside, she found Adam lying on an examination table, pale but conscious, his chest bare except for bandages wrapped around his left shoulder. "Clara," he whispered when he saw her, attempting to smile despite the pain evident in his eyes. "Don't you dare try to sit up," she ordered, rushing to his side and taking his uninjured hand in hers. "What were you thinking, getting yourself shot 2 weeks before our wedding?" Adam's smile strengthened slightly at her scolding tone. "Thought it might make for a more interesting story to tell our grandchildren someday." Relief flooded through Clara at his ability to joke, even now. "You impossible man," she said, tears filling her eyes. "You promised to come back safely." "And I have," he insisted weakly, "just a little, damaged in transit." Dr. Simmons entered, nodding to Clara. "He'll live, Miss Mitchell. The bullet passed clean through, missed anything vital. He needs rest and time to heal, but he should make a full recovery." "Thank God," Clara breathed, brushing Adam's hair back from his forehead. "He can be moved to his place in town tomorrow if he continues to improve," the doctor continued. "But he'll need care for at least a week, possibly longer." Clara straightened her spine, determination replacing fear. "I'll care for him." Both men looked at her in surprise. "That wouldn't be entirely proper, Miss Mitchell," Dr. Simmons said gently. "You're not married yet." "Then we'll marry now," Clara declared, surprising herself with the boldness of the statement. "Today, if possible, tomorrow at the latest." Adam's eyes widened. "Clara, your dress, the church, your sister." Clara shook her head firmly. "None of that matters. You matter, us together, that's what matters." She turned to the doctor. "Is he well enough to say vows?" Dr. Simmons hesitated, then nodded slowly. "If the ceremony is brief, yes." "Then please fetch Reverend Collins," Clara instructed. "And Mrs. Winters, she'll need to serve as witness." The doctor looked to Adam, who nodded his agreement. "Do as she says, Doc. When Clara Mitchell makes up her mind, there's no changing it." Within the hour, Reverend Collins arrived, looking flustered but willing. Mrs. Winters followed, bringing Clara's best dress and a small bouquet of early spring flowers she had hastily gathered. Clara changed in the doctor's small back room, her hands trembling slightly as Mrs. Winters helped with the buttons. This wasn't the wedding she had imagined, but as she looked at her reflection in the tarnished mirror, she knew it was right. Love wasn't about perfect ceremonies or elaborate celebrations, it was about standing by each other through whatever life brought. When she emerged, Adam had been helped into a seated position on the examination table, a clean shirt draped over his bandaged shoulder. His face was still pale, but his eyes brightened when he saw her. "You're beautiful," he said simply. Clara moved to stand beside him, taking both his hands in hers. "Are you certain about this?" she asked quietly. "We can still wait, have the wedding as planned." Adam shook his head. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. Reverend Collins spoke of commitment and partnership, of weathering storms together and building a life of purpose. When it came time for the vows, Adam's voice grew stronger, his promise to love and cherish Clara for all his days ringing with conviction. Clara's own vows came from the deepest part of her heart, a pledge not just of love but of partnership, of standing hand in hand through whatever challenges they might face. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Adam pulled Clara gently toward him for a tender kiss that sealed their union. Mrs. Winters sniffled happily in the background, and even Dr. Simmons appeared moved by the impromptu ceremony. "Mrs. Sullivan," Adam murmured against Clara's lips, the wonder in his voice making her heart soar. "Mr. Sullivan," she replied with a smile. "I believe this is the beginning of a great adventure." True to the doctor's prediction, Adam recovered steadily under Clara's care. They postponed their planned April celebration, holding instead a wedding reception in late May when Adam was fully healed and Clara's sister Caroline had arrived from Boston. The entire town of Awahi turned out for the festivities, held at Adam and Clara's ranch under a canopy of spring green cottonwood trees. Children from both the town school and the newly established ranch school performed recitations and songs. Sheriff Donnelly made a toast to the couple who had found love where a wagon broke down in the heat. Caroline, initially skeptical of Clara's Western life, found herself charmed by the warmth and genuine affection of the Awahi community. "I understand now," she told Clara as they watched Adam dancing with one of his young students, "why you chose this place, this life." Clara squeezed her sister's hand. "It chose me as much as I chose it," she replied, her gaze following her husband's movements. Sometimes the path you never expected leads exactly where you need to go. As the sun set over the ranch, casting long golden shadows across the land that was now truly their home, Adam found Clara standing alone by the creek. He slipped his arms around her waist from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Happy, Mrs. Sullivan?" he asked softly. Clara leaned back against him, covering his hands with her own. "Completely," she assured him. "Though I still can't believe how it all began with a broken wagon in the desert heat." Adam chuckled, the sound vibrating against her back. "Best broken wheel that ever happened," he said, turning her in his arms to face him. "Gave me the excuse to say those words that changed everything." "We'll fix it together, hand in hand," Clara quoted, smiling up at her husband. Adam's eyes softened as he brushed a strand of hair from her face. "And we have been every day since." He leaned down to kiss her, a promise for the future they would build together. "Hand in hand, Clara Sullivan." Always. As twilight deepened into night, stars appearing one by one in the vast Nevada sky, Clara and Adam rejoined their guests, their fingers intertwined. They had each traveled long and winding paths to find each other, Clara from the drawing rooms of Boston, Adam from the battlefields of the Civil War, but in this moment, surrounded by the community they loved in the home they had created together, both knew they had finally found where they truly belonged. In the years that followed, their ranch flourished, as did the school that Clara established there. They welcomed 2 children, a daughter with Clara's determined spirit and a son with Adam's gentle strength. Through droughts and harsh winters, through prosperity and challenges, they remained true to the promise they had made that day by the broken wagon, to face life hand in hand, building something real and lasting in the wild beauty of the West. And sometimes, on summer evenings when the desert heat reminded them of their beginning, Adam would take Clara's hand and lead her to the creek that ran through their property. There, with the setting sun painting the landscape in gold and crimson, He would kiss her as if for the first time and whisper those words that had started their journey together. "We'll fix it together, hand in hand."